So I may now start with giving you a brief introduction of what is the plan and what can be seen today from the documents that are on the table, that are about to be negotiated under the title of New Pandemic Treaty and amendments to the international health regulations. We are here today because we are all concerned by the World Health Organization's strong pressure to extend its powers, its structural and its financial capacities with a permanent effect over the sovereignty of the countries and over the self-determination of the people. It was in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis that the WHO has initiated a reform process which will bring significant changes to all of us, that will concern every human being and every of the 194 member states on this planet. This reform process was started in 2021 with two working streams, preparing two separate legal instruments. Number one, a complete new treaty, the so-called New Pandemic Treaty, and number two, significant amendments to the already existing international health regulations. These two legal instruments, treaty and IHR, are about to be negotiated and finalized, and they bring material changes. The contents of these drafts are on the table. They are available. They are available for everybody. And already in 8 months' time from now, in May 2024, the 194 member states of the WHO will have their final vote on both of these international agreements. This process takes place behind closed doors and at a tremendous speed. It is not reported nor discussed in our newspapers, in our national parliaments, in universities, nor in society. It is unacceptable. This is unacceptable because these two legal instruments will affect every one of us by reducing, even diminishing our loss, our right of self-determination, our right in general of human dignity, and it will eliminate the basic principle of democratic participation. Also, the effects of these treaties will be felt by member states. Who will lose their sovereignty and their autonomy. Therefore, every human being on this planet should understand the essence of the two legal instruments which come under the title of pandemic prevention, pandemic preparedness and response. In a nutshell, the WHO claims in these two legal instruments an absolute and non-questionable leadership in all health matters as soon as WHO refers itself to pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. WHO claims to have the ultimate expertise and the ultimate power in all aspects of this wide field. I recommend to read carefully the current existing draft of the amendments of the International Health Regulations, Article 13A and Article 42. It shall be granted the power of a massive self-authorization whenever it claims to act under this purpose. I recommend to read Article 12 that establishes the preconditions for public health emergency of international concern, together with Annex 2 of the proposed amendments. On the basis of an extremely vague concept, One Health, which basically means anything and nothing, animals' health, ecosystem, concerns about the level of CO2, and of course human health can give rise to permanent measures, and even to a public health emergency, to a pandemic called out and declared by the WHO. And thereby, number 4, WHO has the right, will have the right to not only declare recommendations made by several experts, but also to impose on the people of this planet, or only to a certain region, all kinds of restrictions, access restrictions, lockdowns, surveillance, and experimental treatments. So far, the list of these potential measures can be found in the International Health Regulations, Article 18. And there you will also find one example of the precondition of the proof of vaccination. That was so far meant to be non-binding. In the future, as the word binding is eliminated, and as we have explicitly written down in Article 13a, the proposal, and 42 of the proposal, the commitment that the member states will give when they accept these amendments, the commitment that they will have to apply the proposed measures. This is not enough. Further, WHO will most notably reserve and assume the right to define as the sole instance on this planet and to control all information that it claims to be related to health. And this assumes as well the right for censorship and the right to interfere in social communication. It seems to be so important to the WHO that these provisions can be found in both of the international new agreements in the International Health Regulations and in the new pandemic treaty. And last but not least, of a brief summary that should any time be given once we speak about these new changes, is the fact that there is no mechanism foreseen that will allow the people or the member states to challenge the assessment of WHO, whether it is the WHO's assessment about a public health emergency, or their assessment with respect to certain measures, or when it comes to the imposing of a regime for what they call vaccination, as experimental as it might be. There will be simply no stop button for none of the member states, and not, of course not, for us, the citizens. So now, if we just look at it as a whole, this right of WHO to self-declare, to also auto-authorize itself to claim a public health emergency of international concern and to maintain it for as long as it wants. Number 2, to issue so-called recommendations that will be legally binding and that will be subject to a system of surveillance of the people, surveillance of the member states, then the total control and monopoly on information, including the right of censorship, and then the fact that there is no mechanism of control, the control of WHO, and of correction. What do we have as a result? Well, it is very simple to say. Without the open and the open debate, without the possibility of having different opinions, different hypotheses, different methods to be discussed at the table, there will be no science. And there will be ultimately no democracy. And there will be no legal court proceedings and no justice. If the result is already predefined by one sole authority on this planet, there cannot be, by definition, a proper scientific process, a proper decision-making process. There cannot be any democracy. Number 2, it is a basic principle not only of international law, not only of national constitutional law, that we have, as human beings, the right to know what we consent to. So if we ask ourselves, have we been asked, have we been informed about this process that is about to become reality? The answer is no. And there is one important distinction to be made between these two legal instruments. The new pandemic treaty will be considered by WHO itself as a treaty, and thereby shall be subject to a national process of debate and ratification. But not so for the international health regulations. The international health regulations, by definition of WHO's own writing, when you read the international health regulations, they are qualified as health regulations according to the WHO Constitution, Article 21. And what does that mean? As a consequence, there will be an automatic coming into force right after the vote in 2024. So far, it is still 24 months, but these 24 months have been reduced to 12 months only. So that means that at the end, after May 2025, the international health regulations will become law automatically. So we will not be asked, we have not been informed, and there will be a process of automatic enactment of the international health regulation. This is about as severe as it can be when it comes to the violation of the principle of an informed consent. This principle does not exist only on the individual level, but it exists only also for democracies as a whole. And it exists under the title of self-determination of the people, which is one of the founding principles of the United Nations in the United Nations Charter, Article 1 of 1946. Now, this is the reason why we should all get to know not only what is in these documents, but we shall claim and clearly say that some of these international health regulations and the changes that are modified and declared there will totally be opposed to what we consider our constitutional order, as there is no public information right, as there will be censorship, as there will be human rights not protected, as there will be no checks and balances, as actually it will be the WHO to determine under which legal status we will have to live. That means the power will not be anymore in the hands of the people. And therefore, these negotiations have to be stopped immediately, and it is a matter and a duty for all citizens now to impose the pressure towards their public representatives, political representatives, to make sure that the politicians, the political representatives, understand that they go on beyond of their entrusted vote they can use. Now, as this is just an overview, and as we are here in Europe, and as within Europe, these rules have been already pushed forward to an alarming extent, we found it important to provide you a more detailed overview on the situation here in Europe.